Hello, this is Cody Brockmeyer, Deputy Director of the Southern Plains Regional Field Office in Austin, Texas. In this presentation, I'm going to talk to you about June Area Survey and how it fits into the overall statistical programs of NASS. The acronym NASS, N-A-S-S, stands for the National Agricultural Statistics Service. NASS is one of 4 agencies within the Research, Economics, and Education mission area of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The agency's mission is to provide timely, accurate, and useful statistics in service of U.S. agriculture. NASS is a nonpartisan agency that does not set policy, regulate activity, permit influence, or favor any group above another. NASS is responsible for preparing state and national crop and livestock estimates. Information for NASS reports come from the best possible sources, the producers. The Agricultural Surveys Program obtains basic agricultural data for farmers and ranchers from all over the country for preparing agricultural estimates. Since 1972, NASDA has employed enumerators to collect agricultural data for its Surveys and Estimates program on behalf of NASS. As part of this cooperative agreement, NASS provides support for salaries, travel, expenses, training, and other costs associated with data collection for specific surveys. The June Area Survey is one of the largest annual NASS survey project that provides significant utility to the entire NASS survey program. The data collected are used to supply direct estimates of acreage and measures of sampling coverage for all follow-on surveys with a multiple frame component. State and national estimates for number of farms and land in farms are based on this survey. The survey also provides state and national level indications of crop acreage, livestock inventory, land values, and cash rents. The results of the June survey are very important to farmers and stakeholders alike. The estimates published place farmers on equal footing with product buyers, bankers, credit associations, ag economists, farm organizations, and policymakers. Reliable reports are an invaluable aid to financial institutions in serving the farmers' credit needs. Recommendations and forecasts presented in agricultural magazines and news releases are based on NASS data. Farm supply firms rely heavily on statistics when planning purchases and sales of feeds, fertilizers, machinery, fuel, and seed. Although we conduct the June survey only once each year, the impacts of the survey are felt throughout the year. One of the most important factors is that the survey helps us measure the incompleteness of the NASS List Sampling Frame, or LSF for short. I will discuss this briefly later in the presentation. The survey is also fairly comprehensive, collecting data on crop acreage, grain stocks, livestock inventory, ag labor, land values, farm type, value of sales, demographics, and in odd number years, computer usage. Finally, data reported by tract operators who are not overlapped with the list frame form the basis of samples for follow-on surveys like cattle inventory, sheep and goat report, agricultural labor, hog report, the Agricultural Survey, and ARMS 3. NASS maintains a list of farmers, partners, and other associated names with agricultural operations as part of the List Sampling Frame, or LSF. We also call this the list for short. The list is built from different sources: trade show attendees, commodity organization memberships, news articles and publications, FSA, and etc. Our list is never shared outside of NASS. New additions to the list are constantly reviewed to determine whether they should be active farms or partners, retired farms, landlords, agribusiness operators, managers, or some other specialty type operation. Attached to each record in the list is a set of control data, which indicate basic information about the operation, such as total cropland, crops recently produced, livestock inventory, approximate value of sales, and so on. Control data on active farms are used as a basis for drawing samples for the vast majority of surveys that NASS conducts throughout the year. Farms are typically stratified or grouped by size or by target commodity. Control data are updated on active records every spring based on the responses to NASS surveys, the Census of Agriculture, and other information. New control data are used to classify operators for different surveys. NASS is unique among many statistical agencies in that it does have a list of active farmers, ranchers, and agribusinesses that it can sample for its surveys. Keeping this list maintained has several advantages for an agency like NASS. First, with mailing addresses and good phone numbers, data collection is relatively inexpensive. Also, knowing what is produced by each operator through the control data maintained on each record allows us to target specific or rare commodities. Finally, knowing the relative size of an operation allows us to draw random samples of operations for more common commodities like corn, soybeans, cattle, or hogs, so we don't need to talk to everyone to find out what's being grown. We call this process stratified random sampling, and it is based on an idea that like operations can be grouped together based on size. However, just having a list of farm operators isn't always enough. One of the biggest challenges, for example, is that the list is always incomplete. As I noted earlier, the list is built from different sources such as trade show participants, grower organization memberships, FSA program signups, and other sources. Since not every farm participates in programs like this, the list won't cover the entire population of farmers and ranchers. Something else to consider is that the list is constantly changing and goes out of date quickly. Farmers are retiring and either turning over their land to the next generation or selling their farms to developers. Our new farmers are starting up each year. Consequently, the list requires ongoing maintenance, including adding new names, removing out-of-scope names, removing duplication, and even updating control data for operators who are expanding or downsizing their operation. This makes the list very expensive to maintain. In fact, NASS has a frames maintenance group at its National Operations Center in St. Louis, whose primary responsibility is to help keep the list maintained. The June area survey is different from others NASS conducts because we aren't sampling names of producers from a list, but rather we're sampling plots of land and analyzing the land use. In this survey, random blocks of land called segments are sampled and surveyed to determine the presence of agriculture or agricultural potential. Each county is divided into primary sampling units or PSUs, with each PSU classified based on its potential for agriculture. Then each PSU is further divided into what we call segments. Here is an example of one of the June area segment photographs, similar to the one you might see during pre-screening. Each segment will be shown outlined in red or an aerial photograph. The red lines are typically easily identifiable boundaries. Accompanying each of these photos will be a county map to help you identify the relative location of the segment within the given county. Although the area frame technically covers each square inch of land in the United States, we can't just use it for collecting all of our data. Enumeration of the area frame is very expensive as it requires 100% enumeration of all operators. It is also very difficult to sample for specialty crops or livestock, as we aren't able to easily track locations of minor commodities. Sometimes the area segments do not have good enough boundaries. Perhaps one year there might be a county road or a tree line or a stream that could have served as the segment boundary. But then new construction, clear cutting of trees, and drying up of waterways might change how those boundaries can be found. As a result, for its major survey programs, NASS conducts what we call multi-frame surveys, which take advantage of best features of both the area and list sampling frames. Survey indications can be generated from the list records exclusively or the area records by themselves, but oftentimes, especially in follow-on quarters, area records can be used to measure the incompleteness of the list, and area tract operators who are not listed with a target commodity are used to supplement samples that are drawn from the list. So that brings us back to the June area survey itself, which can be best described as essentially a scavenger hunt in which we find all agricultural activity within each segment that meets the NASS definition of a farm. All land inside each segment must be screened for agricultural activity. We also need to identify and record the tract operators, who will be compared to the list. Then, determined by the answers to the screening question, all land in each segment must be assigned to a tract type, which may be agriculture, non-agriculture, or non-agriculture with the potential for agriculture in the near future. In several Western states, there are tracts which do not meet the definition of land and farms. These are PIGA tracts, Public Industrial or Grazing Association land. Once the segment is sampled, it typically will be surveyed for 5 years before rotating out. Each segment will be marked with a 6-digit number, which is typically referred to or by the last 3 digits. Example, 191307 might often be referred to as segment 307. This is because the first digit is always a 1, while the second digit indicates the year we began enumerating the segment. In the picture on the left, the segment rotated in the sample is 2019, which is indicated by the second digit being a 9. In the picture on the right, the segment would have rotated into the sample in 2020, so the second digit of the segment number is a 0. As part of the survey, you will need to account for every square foot of land or water inside the segment boundary, both agriculture and non-agricultural land. To do this, you must identify the owners and or operators of land inside the segment and screen them to determine whether or not there is agricultural activity or the potential for agricultural activity taking place inside the segment. Each owner or operator will be assigned a tract letter on the aerial photo. A tract is defined as a parcel of land under one operating arrangement. Tract boundaries are to be shown in blue using pencils or pens designated for that purpose. Then each tract is represented by letters, starting with A, and then using the next available letter for each successive tract operator. Separate letters are used for each tract. For segments with more than 26, double letters are used such as AA, BB, or CC. Tracts in the eastern U.S. are separated in 2 major classifications, ag tracts and non-ag tracts. Non-ag tracts include areas of land with no agricultural activity. Non-ag tracts account for about 50% of all identified tracts nationwide. An agricultural tract is any operating arrangement with land in the segment boundary that is either actively farming or ranching or has the potential to qualify as a farm. PIGA tracts are Public Industrial or Grazing Association land, which does not meet the definition of land and farms. Several Western states, including those shown here, can also identify tracts as PIGA tracts. Regarding farm potential, NASS's official definition of a farm states that a farm is any establishment from which $1,000 or more of agricultural products were sold or would normally be sold during the year. The farm definition has changed several times over the history of the agricultural data collection. but the current definition hasn't changed since 1974. Presence or absence of agriculture is based on the total acres operated as of June 1st of the sampled year. USDA estimates also don't just include commercial or family farms, but will also include institutional farms, experimental stations, research farms, and farms on Indian reservations. For owners and operators who receive payments from government programs tied to agriculture, those payments are included as part of annual farm sales. For example, a retired farmer who no longer grows crops or raises livestock could still have land signed up with the Conservation Reserve Program sponsored by FSA. That person could still be considered as operating a farm because they are receiving government payments tied to agriculture. It is important to note that during your pre-screening efforts, this definition should not bear a lot of weight. Questions asked on the screening form and AgTrack questionnaire will be used to determine farm status. You should not code any tract or non-ag tract because you believe that it does not meet the $1,000 sales criteria. Please always follow the screening questions and ask them as they are written. More on this will be discussed in another presentation. In closing, June area continues to be the cornerstone of many of the NASS estimates, including those published in the June Acreage Report, June Grain Stocks Report, Land Values Report, and Farms and Land and Farms Report. Data collected during this survey also creates supplemental samples for follow-on surveys such as cattle, sheep and goats, labor, hogs, arms, and objective yield. Since the area survey is tied back to the land, this survey can provide ground truths for weather-related impacts. It can help pinpoint areas that could be impacted and allow for follow-up enumeration to ensure NASS publishes the best estimates possible. In a data-driven world, the June area survey helps provide that snapshot to assist numerous other NASS projects, like several remote sensing projects and geographic information system research projects. In the end, the June area survey helps provide the baseline for U.S. agricultural producers. In good years and in bad, data collected from the producers on this survey continue to tell the story of U.S. agriculture. Thanks for your time and enjoy the rest of your training.